I had always heard the story of Mr. Craven growing up. The story about when his wife murdered him. He was abusing her daily, in some of the worst ways. One night, he lifted his fist to strike her, and she shoved him down the stairs. He broke his neck on the way down. A few friends were spending the night at my house during the weekend, and my parents always went to sleep at 9 and never left their room once their door closed. So, being the 17-year-olds that we were, we liked to sneak out at night and roam the town. We waited until 10 p.m. Then, we put our shoes on and snuck out of my house with the bottle of alcohol that we stole earlier that day. While we were walking around town, we approached the street where Mr. Craven was murdered. No one had lived there since the murder. I dared my friend to go in the house. He said the only way he would go in is if we all went in. So, being young and drunk, we went in. We kicked a window in and climbed through. We were being loud and obnoxious and goofing off in there. I think we acted that way to mask the fact that we were all truly terrified to be in that house. While we were downstairs messing around, we heard footsteps coming from upstairs. Instantly, the four of us froze and looked towards the stairs. "Hello?" No one replied, but I slowly crept towards the stairs. I looked up the flight of stairs, but no one was there. I took a few more slow steps up the stairs. Right when I was about halfway up the stairs, a man stepped out from around the corner and stood at the top of the stairs. His head was completely turned around backwards. I screamed at the top of my lungs and ran down the stairs. My friends and I jumped out of the window and ran as fast as our legs could go back to my house. We quickly snuck back into my house and went to my room. I wanted to wake my parents and tell them what happened, but I couldn't. Otherwise, they would know we snuck out and we would be grounded. So, we just kept our mouths shut and went to sleep. I'm not sure if my mind was playing tricks on me in that house. Maybe it was. Maybe I was just really drunk. Or maybe I just saw Mr. Craven.
When I was 10, I was in the Boy Scouts. At first, I was only in it because my parents made me do it, but I ended up liking it after some time. Every year, our scoutmaster takes us on a camping trip to learn how to identify plants and how to navigate through the woods if we ever got lost. We had to do the buddy system for when we went out at night to explore. My buddy's name was Josh. We had become good friends in the last 2 years. The camping trip was a 3-day adventure, and everything was going great, until the second night. After a day of hiking and fishing and learning new types of plants, all of us were huddled around the campfire. The fire was almost out, and we were all going to go to sleep after the fire died. Josh told the scoutmaster that he had to pee. The scoutmaster looked at me and said, "Take your buddy out back, about 10 yards, and then come right back." Josh and I got up and headed out to the woods. We got about 10 yards out, and I told Josh to go up a little further so that I didn't have to hear him pee. After about 5 minutes, Josh never came back to where I was standing. I called out his name a few times, but he didn't respond. I figured he walked past me and back to the camp, and I simply just didn't notice him walking by. So I turned back and went back to camp. When I got there, the scoutmaster looked at me and asked, "Where's Josh?" I was confused. I said, "You mean he's not here?" Instantly, the scoutmaster asked where he was. I said, "He never met back up with me, and I thought he came back here." Right away, he blew his whistle and got all the troops together and told us to lock arms. He then went into his backpack and pulled out all the flashlights that he had and told everyone that Josh was missing and we needed to search for him. All the kids started freaking out and getting scared, but we went out and began the search. Several hours went by, but still no sign of Josh. The boys started to get tired. After all, they were only 10, and it had to have been around 1 a.m. by now. Luckily, there was another adult with us, and he took the kids back to camp to go to sleep. But the scoutmaster and I kept searching. About half an hour later, we came across an abandoned house. We thought maybe Josh got lost and scared and found this house and went inside to wait until morning. We then approached the house. The door was already half open, so we entered. We looked in the house for a few minutes, and then the scoutmaster went into one room while I followed behind him. After taking one step into the room, the scoutmaster put his arm across my chest to block me as he said these words in a quivering voice. "Oh, my sweet Jesus." I pushed his arm away and was able to see inside. There, laying on the ground, was the body of Josh. His arms, legs, and head were severed from his body in a pool of blood. I instantly threw up, and the scoutmaster picked me up, threw me over his shoulder, and ran as fast as he could back to the camp. When we got there, we rounded up the boys and left the camp to find a phone to call the police. The police came and investigated, but no one ever discovered who or what killed little Josh. Maybe it was an animal. Maybe it was a person. Needless to say, that was the last year I was a Boy Scout.
My wife Ashley and I are very outdoorsy. We enjoy nature and camping and hiking. Every summer, we go camping at least 3 times. So, needless to say, we were excited to get on the road to this year's first trip. We packed our gear and hit the road. After a few hours, we arrived to the campsite and set up our tent. We made good time and got to the site a few hours earlier than we thought we would. So instead of relaxing for the first night, we decided to go on a hike while the sun was still out. As we were hiking, we came across an old abandoned brick house. Normally, people would probably just see the house and move on. But being the adventurous type of people that we were, we decided to investigate this old house. We went in. The house was dusty and stunk horribly. We noticed that there was a door on the floor that you could open and walk down to the basement. When we opened the door, a wave of stench rose up and into our nostrils. We got down the steps, and each step croaked from old age. When we got down there, we could see that the floor was covered in animal bones, and even some decaying animals as well. That was enough for us to leave. But what we saw next will never leave my memory. There, laying on the top of the pile of animal bones, was the skull of a human head. My wife screamed, and I grabbed her, and we ran out of that house and straight to the police. We ended up finding out that it was the skull of a hiker that went missing a few weeks prior. But what was probably the scariest part of this whole situation was that the skull was the only part of the man that was down in that basement. Where was the rest of the body?
In the last 5 years, my best friend and I have been into exploring abandoned houses and buildings. However, We stopped doing it after what happened when we explored the house on Shore Street. Shore Street is a very long road that stretches directly from the city that we live in all the way to the country. There are countless buildings and houses along the road, but towards the end, out in the middle of nowhere, there's a few houses, and they all look to be abandoned. One evening, we took our flashlights and headed out to the one house that looked the most run down and forgotten. There was a small barbed wire fence to hop, but it wasn't a big deal for us, being 18 years old and in pretty good physical condition. As we were walking up, we were both stopped by the unmistakable noise that we heard coming from inside the house. We looked at each other and laughed. We were a bit creeped out, but honestly, it just made us want to go inside even more. It made it more exciting. We walked up to the house and tried to open the front door. No surprise, it was locked. Then my friend walked over to the window and started taking off the screen. As soon as he dropped the screen, he turned around and started sprinting away from the house. I was startled and confused, but knew that he must have seen a person. I started to run away as well, but I couldn't help myself. I turned around and saw why he started running away. Inside of the house, there were two kids standing at the window looking out. They were twins, and they looked like a nightmare. Ecstasy. It is a drug that is indescribable. It makes you feel happier than being 5 on Christmas morning. It makes the touch of a stranger feel like a fuzzy hug from a teddy bear. It also can make you hornier than a 14-year-old schoolboy. These are the feelings that I felt while I was on this drug at a bonfire party in the woods. I was dancing to techno music with the prettiest girl at the party. Things were getting heated and sweaty between us, so we decided to break away from the party to find a good spot to unleash the sexual tension that we were building up. We walked quite a distance just to make sure none of our sleazeball friends could see us. That's when we stumbled across an abandoned-looking house. It was made of wood and seemed to have been there for quite a while. I suggested to her to go in. She didn't feel comfortable going in, but I ended up convincing her that it would be better to do it in the house rather than up against some tree. So we went in. It was dark. Only a small light from the moon shined in. I looked at her, moved in closer, and began to kiss her neck. She started unbuttoning my pants and breathing heavier. Next, our shirts came off, her breasts against my chest. Her skin was amazing. Suddenly, we were interrupted by the sound of footsteps walking slowly across the outside of the house. "What was that?" she said. "I don't know, but I'm going to kill whichever asshole followed us to watch." I handed her her shirt and told her to stay right here. I walked outside and shut the door behind me. I walked around the entire house. I didn't see anyone, though. I shouted out a warning to whoever the pervert was that they better leave. I took one more look out into the trees and the bushes just to make sure, but again, there was no one. Maybe it was just the drugs and the paranoia that made us hear something. I turned around to walk back into the house, but when I went to open the door, it was locked. I started banging on the door and yelling for her to unlock it. She screamed back that she can't unlock it. I then ran to the window, and when I looked into the house, there was a dark figure around 6 feet tall, standing right behind her. I screamed to her, "There's someone behind you!" She turned around, and the man put his hands around her and began choking her. I ran straight back to the door, stepped a few feet back, and used all my body weight to break down the door. And when I did, all I saw was the girl on her hands and knees, coughing and breathing heavily. The figure of the man was gone. I ran through the abandoned house looking for the guy, but there was no one in the house but the two of us. We quickly ran out of that house and back to the party, and then we had a friend drive us home. I don't know what happened that night. I don't know what I saw. Maybe it was a man. I don't know. Maybe I actually encountered a ghost.
Hey all, Killer Orange Cat here. If you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please hit the subscribe button below, or use the icon of Ichigo that will appear at the end of this video. Leave a comment to let me know what you thought, and consider sharing this video with someone you think might enjoy it. If you have a story you'd like narrated on Killer Orange Cat, please send it to the address included in the description. All I ask is that the story is original, meaning that it has not been read on any other YouTube channel. In the meantime, don't forget to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.